Hello, my name is Chloe. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm bringing to you my April wrap-up. So April was not the best reading month for me, and I was going to say I don't have excuses. I do have excuses. So in April, I had a weekend out of reading because I had the lovely Rachel and Emily come to visit. I also had a lot of evenings where I was either prepping or stressing over job interviews because I've actually changed job. Well, I'm in the process of changing job because I got a new job and there were multiple interviews for it and they were quite high stakes, high stress. So a lot of the time I just didn't want to read. But I did still manage to read 12 books in April, which sadly was 7 less than March, but still 12 books. It's a good amount. In those 12 books, I read 4,248 pages, which is sadly a decrease of 37% on March. I read an average of 142 pages a day, and the average length of the books I was reading was 354 pages. This I think is interesting because in March, the average length was 356, so it's only changed by 0.5%. So I'm reading similar sizes of books, which to me is a good thing because I'm not reading like shorter books to complete my goal. I'm still continuing with normal reading, it's just life events that are getting in the way. So my ratings for the month were as follows. I had 3 2-star reads, 1 3-star, 1 3.5 star, 5 4 stars, and 2 5 stars, which made my average rating for the month a 3.5 star. 10 of the books I read were physical and 2 of them were on audio. So as I usually do, let's start from the bottom and work our way up to the top. The first 2-star book I had this month was We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. I had very high hopes for this book when I originally hauled it, but after reading The Haunting of Hill House, I knew that I wasn't a massive fan of Shirley Jackson's writing, and I was quite unsure with where this book was going to go. The thing that made this such a lowly rated book for me is it's always, everywhere I've seen it, been described as a horror, and I'm not sure what other genre I would put it in, but I was not scared, I was not creeped out, I didn't find it mysterious. It was more of a literary fiction in my mind, and that's why it got quite a bad rating. I'm going to try and make this my quickest wrap up ever, by the way. We shall see. The second 2-star book I had was Ace of Spades by Farida Abike-Iamede, and I sadly hated this. I kind of knew it going in. I'd heard some reviews that were like saying that it just wouldn't be to my taste, and it really wasn't. So we're following a private school and we've got Devon and Chia. They are the only 2 black students in this private school. And we start off with them at the beginning of the year being voted into like the leadership team. However, someone is out to get them both, someone who holds all the aces, and they're planning much more than a high school game. It is a mystery thriller, so we need to find out who is holding all of the secrets about the 2 characters, why they are bringing them to light, and what their end game is. I just didn't like the end game. The end game felt so unbelievable and so silly that I really disliked it, and yeah, couldn't rescue this book in my mind. I really didn't like it. Potentially my most disappointing book so far this year is Influencer Island by Kyle Rutkin. So this book I picked up because of a try a chapter tag, which you guys haven't even seen the start of because I've not finished it yet, but I picked this up, tried the first chapter, and decided I had to read it immediately. This is told in interview transcripts, which yeah, you can kind of see, and the first 100 pages I found really compelling. We're following an island that is created by a mysterious artist, kind of like Banksy but darker. So this artist says he's launching a new installation and it's going to be around this influencer island, and you have to enter a competition to be one of the 10 people lucky enough to go onto this island to hang out with influencers. It's basically about how far would you be willing to go for fame. First 100 pages I loved, and then the actual like competition threat to life element was so quick that I just didn't care. Like genuinely, I was like, well, what was the point in this? There was more intrigue in getting them to the island than actually the times on the island, and I felt like most of it wasn't even explained in the end. So yeah, I really disliked this because it had 5-star potential at the start, and then at the end I just wanted to throw it across the room. Also, a way to really not get a good review from me is to make your dedication a thank you to Bookstagram and BookTok for renewing your faith in publishing. I think any booktuber that picks up this book, reads that dedication, doesn't go into it with wanting to give you 5 stars. So I don't know. I respect this author is thankful for BookTok. I respect BookTokers. It's not the way to get a 5-star review out of me. Next up, my only 3-star read was Dream Lake by Lisa Kleypas, and this feels like one of I feel like I read it months ago. So this was a strange little contemporary romance with a paranormal aspect. So we're following 2 characters. Obviously, with it being the first book I read this month, I remember nothing. But we have a ghost who is in a house that's being renovated, and he meets our male love interest. And there's something about him, and he just attaches himself to this human and can be seen by this human. We're then following a lovely baker lady, and it's a whole little grumpy sunshine romance with her and this guy. But she's also dealing with struggles of her grandmother, who has always been like the pillar of who she gets her support from, and just, you know, the center of her world, needs to be put into a care home, but she decides that before she does that, she'd like to take the time to try and look after her herself. So gets an old house redecorated and ready to live in using the services of the male love interest. We're looking at the grumpy sunshine romance, but also why this ghost is sticking around. And overall, it wasn't a very compelling story, but it did end up pretty cute. I probably would have DNF'd it if I wasn't reading this for one of my colleagues at work, who it's one of her favourite books. So I may have DNF'd it apart from that, but I stuck on with it, and the last 75, 100 pages were really cute. So I'm glad I carried on. Only gets 3 stars. Next up, the 3.5 star was The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. So I really wanted to love this. I've seen amazing reviews. People who don't typically read historical fiction still really love this. And I have read one Kristen Hanna book before, which was Night Road, which I think I gave 4 stars. I was buddy reading this with Victoria, and if I wouldn't have been, I would have DNF'd, and I would have given it a very low rating. The first 250 pages, I didn't really care about the characters at all. We're following 2 sisters in France during World War II, and we're dealing with the Nazi occupation of France. We're dealing with SS soldiers living with one of the sisters. It's like a really horrible time in history, and it's horrible to think about. But for the first 250 pages, it was just any kind of historical fiction. I really didn't attach to any of the characters. I didn't really, it's not that I didn't care, because I clearly care about that time in history, but I just didn't really feel anything. How it ended was lovely. It was gorgeous. I absolutely loved it, and I know that's what really changed Victoria's rating on it, because we did feel the same up to near the end. I just never managed to develop those emotional connections with the characters, so it didn't quite break me as much as it did Victoria. It gets 3.5 because it was more than fine. That ending really did wow me. We went from a 1-2 star book where I didn't care to a 5-star ending, so we met in the middle at a 3.5. The first 4-star book I read is When You Were Mine by Rebecca Searle, and this was just such a perfect little YA romance. We're following Rose and Rob, who have been best friends forever, and they decide that this start of the school year, screw it, they're not friends anymore, they're gonna try out a relationship. And then Rose's cousin Juliet comes back to town, and it's all about who is Juliet meant to be with, who is her Romeo. And yeah, it was very, very cute. So we've got the initial betrayal of this Rob guy going for Juliet instead of her cousin, who's been his friend his whole life, and they're finally making a go of it. And then we have this side character appear on the scenes who it's very clear what's going to happen when you've read a lot of YA romance. He's a little bit weird. He's not quite anyone she would have considered as a romantic interest before, but he wins her over. And yeah, it was such a perfect YA romance. I would have kept my copy, but it was pretty beat up and just miserable. So I am on the lookout for the American edition, which is gorgeous. Not in a desperate need to get it because I have already read it, but it's definitely one I want for my collection of fun YA romances. Speaking of fun YA romances, we have Open Road Summer by Emery Lord. This is a YA romance. We're following, I've forgotten their names already, Reagan and Dee. Reagan gets in a little bit of trouble everywhere. She's the bad girl, and Dee is an up-and-coming country music star. So Dee and Reagan go on their own little tour of America for her singing career, and they need an opening act for the tour. So they get this guy Matt involved, who is on the same record label but hasn't been having a lot of success lately. Matt and Dee start a fake dating arrangement to keep some bad press off of Dee and her ex-boyfriend, but it turns out that Reagan is quite interested in Matt herself, and oh my god, this was adorable too. This is one where I go back on what I've just said. This is a pretty beat up old copy, but I'm gonna hang on to this until I can get a nice one. I did really like this romance. I would happily read it again. It did start off very Taylor Swift feels, so I would recommend it for the Swifties out there, which is not me, but I see why people would like this. And overall, it was just a fun time, really fun time. Sticking with romance but heading to adult, we have Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey, which I gave 4 stars. The average rating is lower than that on Goodreads, and Becca read it as part of the Patreon buddy read and gave it a 2, I think. This is a very polarizing Tessa Bailey, and I think it's because there is quite a lot of smut told from the male perspective that could be seen as quite inappropriate, maybe, but I did really like how it was told. It felt very honest and real to me. It wasn't like a romanticized way of looking at a woman. It was very primal, maybe is the word, which I know would make many people feel uncomfortable, but it didn't to me, and I still really liked the romance. So we're following Hallie and Julian. Hallie fell for Julian when she was 14 at like a party, and Julian basically has no idea who she is. Hallie's been working in the town as a florist and has continued that after the passing of her grandmother, and they were working together. Julian comes back to town on a sabbatical from work to his family's vineyard, and he sees this bubbly, energetic gardener planting flowers around his little house, and he's like, who is she? Why is she invading my time, and how can I get rid of her? I guess, does this count as Grumpy Sunshine too? I don't know. I don't think we can quite call it haters to lovers because it's like irritators to lovers, but I just thought it was really cute. It's not on the same scale as It Happened One Summer. I think that will be a romance that's very hard to beat from Tessa Bailey, but I did really enjoy this and I would thoroughly recommend it. Let's just stick to the romances then. The 4th 4-star read I had was Say You Swear by Megan Brandy. This book, I mean, it's described as the unforgettable TikTok sensation. I see why. This is very, is it behind me? Oh, it's just hidden out of shot. This is very Magnolia Parks for the Americans, I think. And I gave Magnolia Parks 4 stars. So we are following Ariana. Yes, we're following Ariana, who is part of a little group of 5 friends who are very close. So we've got her and her twin brother, her best friend Cameron, and then her brother's 2 friends, like 2 guy friends. She developed a crush on one of the guy friends during their like early teenage years, which has built up over the years, and they are now going off to college. The summer before college, things come to a head with her and the guy she's got a crush on, and things happen quite extremely and quite quickly, but the friend decides that he'd rather stay friends with the brother than risk a romance with his twin sister. During this time, she meets a new guy, Noah, and Noah just becomes the best friend. He is really restoring her faith in men, and yeah, she makes a really good friendship with him, which may or may not turn into something more. This was not good. I've given it 4 stars. It was not good. If you want the next literary masterpiece, I would not go for this book, but it genuinely was just a fun time to read. I enjoyed it. I was finding time to sit and read it. Like genuinely, I had a lot going on during this week, but I was really craving wanting to sit and read my book. So it really kept me engaged. It's a 500 or so page romance. I cared about it. I wanted to know what was happening, but it's not good. And the final 4-star book I had was The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas. I won't talk about this too much because I believe my live show about this has already gone live, so make sure you go back and check that out where I discuss this book in full. But this is a collection of prequel novellas to Throne of Glass, and overall I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. There were some stories in here that were better than others, like the second short story I'd probably have given like 2.5 stars, and the final one was more of a 5-star feel. So a range in this book, but overall really enjoyed it. 4 stars. And now we have 2 5 stars, neither are rereads, and both were very unexpected. And of course now my battery runs out, so bear with. Not that you will notice a delay. Okay, we're back. I have two 5-star reads, neither are rereads, and I don't know which one to tell you about first, because if you remember my TBR, you're probably expecting both of these. Okay, let's go for expected to unexpected. The expected 5-star read is November 9 by Colleen Hoover. I know at this point, a Colleen Hoover has a solid chance of getting 5 stars from me. Her books just do something to me, and I apologise for that. I know she is not everyone's cup of tea, but something about her books just really, really does like entrap me. So November 9 is following Fallon and Ben. The whole premise of this book, I was probably at a 3-star for like 200 pages because I just really didn't enjoy what we were doing. So Fallon meets Ben at a restaurant one night. She is in LA and she is moving to New York, and she's telling her dad that she's moving to New York the next day. Her dad starts kind of criticizing her dream. She wants to be an actress, and she suffered some very horrible burn injuries when she was under her dad's care. So her dad then starts telling her that she basically isn't pretty enough to be an actress anymore. Ben doesn't like this, and he storms over and pretends to be her boyfriend. I still don't really quite know how that was related, but that's what happens. They then spend this night together before her trip to New York, and they decide to meet again on that date, November 9th, every year for 5 years, because Fallon has decided that she cannot be in love and she cannot know that she's in love until she's 23. Yeah, 23. They meet every year on that day for 5 years, and lots of things happen during that time, but we basically only see the characters on respective November 9ths, and I really did love it. I did love it. There then came a twist at the end into why Fallon knows Ben anyway, and that just broke my heart. The whole ending broke my heart, so I had no option but to give this 5 stars. Clearly, like nothing else could be given. So the final book I gave 5 stars to this month, and I am so happy I loved it this much, is Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. This was the Chloe's Crime Scene Corner read, and I don't think I've ever had a 5-star from Chloe's Crime Scene Corner. I could probably be corrected, but I genuinely love this. I can't fault it in my enjoyment. So this is an incredibly dark thriller. We're following Georgina, or Gio, who is involved at the start in a murder trial. Her boyfriend from way back when was the Sweet Bay Strangler, and he killed her best friend. But she is in trial for withholding evidence that could have come to the discovery of her friend's body sooner than it did. We're then following her during time in prison, and then once she gets out. And oh my god, this book was so disturbing. It wasn't the best book ever written. I've given it 5 stars, but don't get me wrong, it wasn't the best book ever written. But I genuinely had such a fantastic time. If you liked the grittiness of The Butterfly Garden, for example, you would also love this. It's very disturbing. If I even listed the trigger warnings for you that the author lists, we would probably get demonetized on this video. So it's very dark. Please do, if you are so inclined, please do check what is featured in this book, because it is dark, I won't lie to you. But I had a fantastic time with how depraved it was. So what does that say about me? So there we have it. Those are the 12 books that I read in March, or April rather, April. I had some new favourites in there clearly, and some very enjoyable YA romances and adult romances at the same time. So hopefully I can repeat and improve my performance in May. A 3.5 average rating is really good for me, so if I can repeat that, I'll be very, very happy. I have only read, at the time of filming, 1 book in May, and it's a 2-star, so I really need to up my game. If you have any thoughts or feelings on any of these books, please do leave them down in the comments. I would love to talk to you about them. But for now, that is all I have time for today, so thank you very, very much for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!